forum. Great to see everyone bright and early today. I think Bangalore is a late city, but you guys are really pushing the buck on coming here this early, so thanks for that. Today, I'm going to talk about some of the paradigms in the field of experience, not exactly from a theoretical XD's point of view, but more from a view of a developer or a designer on the web. My attempt is to trigger your thoughts in the direction of experience, try to think a little more about the consumer you're working with and what he would find engaging. So that's where we are headed today. So what's the fuss all about? I mean, what is this whole monster called experience? We always have this notion that we need to build good experience, but beyond that, it's extremely fuzzy. There are, of course, great designers in this country and all over the world who've built fascinating experiences. Some of them are very popularly known. For example, Apple's products do have great user experience. I was just seeing the Win phone, as well as we've all seen the Android. All of these are making great strides towards experience, and obviously many of you know that Adobe's products have been in the experience field for a long time, well-established players. So there are people who are working towards it, but now the focus also comes to you as developers to build such great experiences for your customers. So that's important, and you have to create that delight. The fuss is all about creating that delight. How do you make your customers look as excited for the apps or the web experiences that you build? This was a survey done by Forrester on 35 enterprise and consumer websites on how usable they are. Are they a pass? They had various parameters. This report is available for people to read. But the striking thing is not a single one of these websites passed. Every single one failed. With all the knowledge that we have today, people are still making decisions which are not experience-centric or user-centric. They're still going the way of saying, okay, there's functionality, we'll think about it as a last step if we have budget time, those kind of things. But that means that there is failure in every one of the sites surveyed. What we're going to talk about a little bit now is, what is that recipe? There is a structured way of thinking. This is not a solution, but just a structured way of thinking around experience. So we are going to go through a few steps of what you could think about when you're thinking about your experience and your customers' expectations of you. If you see the way someone is interacting with your product or your site, the first thing you need to do is you need to capture their attention. There are so many sensory impingements on you all throughout the day, all around you. There's someone talking about cricket when you're trying to just file your leave, and you get diverted and you never file it. Those kind of things. There's so much happening. So the first problem to solve really is to capture attention. Bring that person to what you have to show. And there are some studies done by research institutes about, these are psychoanalysis studies about how do you capture someone's attention. So one of the notions is an attentional set. An attentional set is a set of attributes which you expect a certain site to have. It is like you having a preconceived notion from wherever you have. It could be a combination of things like color, size, sound. So you have for example, if I say the word rose, a large number of people usually think of a red rose. So it's like you have an automatic association between this color and this object. So attentional set is when you're in a space where users are expecting something of you, you need to feed that. You need to create those parameters so that a person recognizes that that's what you're talking about. That's what an attentional set is. The second part of it is, let's assume that you're in a website like a portal which has n number of things, but your widget or whatever has to capture attention. There is no expectation out of a portal from each individual widget because it is a multifunctional element, right, that portal. So in that case, when there is no preconceived notion, onset is the way of capturing attention. So when something is moving, when everything else is static, or it just appears in front of you, you know that something has changed and you are immediately trying to look for what has changed. So it's not that you're trying to recognize what has happened, it is just that something has changed and it grabs your curiosity. So these are two mechanisms, documented ways of capturing attention. Now, once you have captured attention, where do you go from there? Because captured attention is just the first step. And you can easily move away the moment you see what it is, right? So the next step is you need to actually build interest through relevance. The moment the person has moved his eyes towards you, you need to ensure that they find what has come up to be relevant to them. So how do you build that relevance? Firstly, it has to be something useful which that person understands. That's the fundamental. At no point can experience hide non-functionality. You can always have functionality and kind of say that, okay, I'm not going to invest in experience, and you may get to some distance, but having experience and no functionality is never an option. So you have to fundamentally have something useful in there. Secondly, contextual. This is growing real big with the whole mobile experience. I think most of the people here who have smartphones would see that your mobile will look at your GPS location. It may look for Bluetooth connectivity to certain devices around. But what is important to build in your experience, and more so in mobile experiences, is try to capture the context around you. That makes it all the more relevant. For example, if you're in a mall and you see an ad through when you're doing a Google search or whatever it is, of an offer in that mall, that is far more important than seeing that there's a book sale in, say, the US or whatever. So the more contextual it is, the more easily you're going to capture attention and hold it. It has to be accessible, and this is where the tablets and mobiles are making great leaps, because you have that device with you wherever you go. Till you don't have that, you're pretty much constrained to when you're sitting in front of a computer and when you're working at work or at home. But with the mobile device, your context is exactly where you are. It is moving with you, and a lot of people have a propensity to actually keep looking at their mobile phones or talking to people. So it is a device which is very often in your hands. So it needs to be accessible and social. Relevance for many people today is about being social, about being visible. If you've just bought a pair of great shoes or a great car, you actually want to tweet the picture, you want to actually say that I'm here, I'm doing the latest and greatest thing. So this whole relevance also maps onto social, because when you can be visible and you have the propensity to be social, it actually captures and keeps your attention. And encompassing all of this is speak the user's language. If you say something which is very officious looking to someone in the teens, they're probably just going to say that this is not relevant. They won't even really read it. Or if you try to show too many colors to someone trying to build an enterprise or someone who's using an enterprise app, they're going to first spend some time thinking whether is this the real site I need to be in? This doesn't look like what I normally use. So speak the user's language. It is not about being, it's not just about linguistics, but it is also about semantics, which that person understands, your target segment understands. So you go through the standard marketing rigmarole maybe of segmentation and targeting, but you have to spend that effort to ensure it is a customer experience management notion. You actually manage the experience of the customer based on what he is talking about, or what he understands. The next step is building trust. So once you have captured attention and Next, you have told the user that this is relevant to you. You need to actually make that effort to build trust. This is especially true for consumer external facing websites where someone, maybe a shopping site or whatever, and that person has to trust you to basically be able to pay his money to you, to be able to understand that you're giving him the best deal or you're honest about what you're talking. The fact that you have, as a provider, taken enough efforts to provide information. It could also be an omission case, right? So these are you have to build trust in people. And how do you build that trust? So I'm going to show you 3 images now, and just go through these 3 images and think about what comes into your mind, which is a common thread between these 3. Three images from very different paradigms, but what is common is they're all beautiful. There is that element of I don't even know how to characterize it. When my son is 13 months old, but every time he sees the ice cream and spinach ad of Priyanka Chopra, he's ready to eat. He doesn't understand usability, he doesn't understand beauty, but there is that natural thing which she has on television that makes him think that this is something which is interesting to me, and like I hate eating, but I will. So that is the notion of beauty. And there are some inherent, again, research reports of what beauty signifies. Beauty has been researched to signify scientific truth. So when you have something which is presented well, human beings tend to believe that it's truthful. It is a sign of health. It means that the whole ecosystem behind this creation is healthy and thus trustworthy. There is a promise of happiness. It's like, this thing looks good, it makes me feel good, most likely I'll be happy using this. And there is a sincere effort. Everyone knows that beauty is a rare thing. It is not something which, with a snap of your hands or with random work, you will get a thing of beauty. It is possible but highly improbable. So people immediately tend to believe that there is some sincere effort which has gone behind this whole creation, and so it means that someone has taken a serious effort to build this. The difficulty is, beauty is in the eyes of the beholder. There is no formula to say this is beautiful. I showed you 3 images, but I didn't give you characteristics which says that you can write an algorithm to say this is why X, Y, and Z is beautiful. And that is why you need user validation. It goes back to that whole notion of who are your users. Think of the customers you want to actually attract and pay attention to, the demographics, the age group, which geography they're from, and take the effort of doing a user validation exercise of taking a beta version or mock-up or whatever it is, and making that person experience it and give their views about it. For example, if you see in China, the whole notion of gambling and gaming is so big and cultural that they're ready to pay like thousands and thousands of RMB just to buy virtual goods, just because they want to look good compared to other people playing the same game where they are buying virtual goods. Now, if you come and tell that to most people in India, they'll say like, man, that's such a huge waste of money. But that is why there are people who are fundamentally culturally different, and we have to understand that, and we have to take the effort to go the distance of trying to get users validate what you think is beautiful. And this is a circular exercise. It will not happen in one shot. You have to get feedback and retest it. So it is a matter of taking conscious effort to do that. It really doesn't happen on its own, especially for a serious product. This is a more analytical way of looking at trust, and this is going beyond just the notion of beauty. Beauty is one aspect of it. The other is, who are the kind of people you're talking to traditionally when you're building apps, especially in the context of the industry we are in. You usually have people who are either have a lot of expertise on what they're doing. Let's say it's a photography website and there's an expert of photography, someone who's an expert in photography going to that site and trying to evaluate maybe cameras, images, whatever it is. So the target audience there is an expert. And on the other side, there are the traditional consumers, people who are normal people who do not know specific details or research about a certain thing, but they want to make like maybe most people here may not be experts in photography and we want to buy a camera. How do we go and buy a camera? So we are people with low expertise in that specific field. So they tend to go in two different directions. Experts tend to look at data. They know what that data means. Once you show them the numbers, once you show them the characteristics they're looking for, they will immediately trust that what is being shown is the right thing for them or the wrong thing for them. But it is a clear notion of what is right and wrong, and that builds trust. So trust is about building the right expectation. It's not about building only a positive expectation. On the other side, if you're lower in expertise, you tend to look at people who are experts telling you that, you know, I'm an expert and I'm telling you that this is the right thing to do, or your peers. People tend to trust even their peers more than experts sometimes. So if you have like a social circle and some 5 people have used some product and they say that, you know, this works for me, you don't really have to know the details behind it, but you know that the end user is getting benefited by that product. So you say that, fine, if my peer group who are closest to what I will do are finding it useful, then I'm going to use it. And having that, those views come to you at the right time, being accessible, is where you're going to build trust. So there is this trust path right over there. That's basically the expertise and opinion curve. If you go to the other side, it's obvious that you'll either have suspicion. If you give a lot of opinions to people who are looking for data, who are experts, they'll say that, why isn't there any data there? So why are you trying to tell me all of these things without telling me the meat of it, right? That is when they get suspicious. On the other side, if you take a layman and give them like a whole barrage of numbers, they don't know what to do with it. It's just a matter of confusion. Their decision making is going to get delayed. They might make the wrong decision because they don't know what the numbers mean. So there is confusion in that plane. So it is pretty much safe to stay on the path of trust, which moves along the data and expertise curve. Next thing is, after you've built trust, fair enough, you need to maintain focus. The person who is on your site or using your app is going to get diverted the moment there is something, the next shiny object around the corner. That could be because that is more interesting, or what they're doing is not exactly what they want to do. Like filing expenses, for example. I always take months to file my expenses because that's like the worst thing, in my opinion, of scanning a document, uploading it. I mean, we have a painful process, and that's why it keeps getting delayed, because I'm always partially through the process. And it's always better to maintain a workflow rather than a set of tasks. When you have a set of tasks and you don't clearly explain that after this is finished, where you go next to accomplish what you want to do, it's going to be, that is the moment when you lose that focus, because the user is going to go back to a site or to a main menu or whatever it is to try and go to the next menu item, which in his mind is the workflow, and there'll be some 10 things there. He may hit the wrong thing and he may find something a little different. Maybe he'll find, in our case, you could find like compensation and benefits somewhere in that same website and you'll get diverted. Am I being paid right? So you never get to the point where you had to finish that workflow. So a workflow is different from your site or your app structure. You could have an app structure which is defined by how people start using your product, but a workflow can very easily take you from somewhere in the tree. If you think of it as a tree, your web application, from any point to another point based on a workflow, you can make it independent of how your product or your web application is built. So ensure that you have a workflow. The second thing is, many people build these esoteric UIs for tasks, and this is especially true in enterprise apps. There will be some text box which has something like asset code number, something like that, and you have no idea unless you actually see an asset code number on the object you're looking at, what it means, where to find it, those kind of things. But maybe there is a red number etched on all your hardware devices, and that's the asset code number which people know. This is a simplistic example of what I'm trying to explain, but the point is, as long as you make things obvious so that people don't need to look for help in addition to what they're seeing, that is a usability loss. That is again a diversion of attention to something which is not important for the task, it is not important for getting that whole experience, but because it was confusing, first of all you've lost that interest bit and you've moved that person over to a different page, and the help system itself can be its own big confusion. You'll have some big TOC and there'll be a lot of text which you'll have to go through and drill down. So in the ideal world you should try to build something which requires no help, but that is, like I said, in the ideal world. When you do have to provide help, ensure that it is in context to what you're doing at that point of time, in context to even data you've entered. Even from a UI perspective, if it is something where you don't have to move away from that screen to a different screen, that's the best thing. If you have seen some of the examples of login, right? The moment you you put in a login ID and then a password, and it goes to a different page to tell you, okay, this is the wrong ID, password, and all those kind of things. But many people have learned from that mistake, and they, even when you're typing, if it's something which is not a security problem, even if you have the wrong number of characters, it comes up right there saying that you've crossed the number of characters or you don't have enough, so continue typing right there. It comes in the context of that text box. That is important. You're not diverting attention, you're giving that person information exactly at the right time to say that this is what you need to get this task done that you're doing. So keep help context specific and keep that person's attention to what that person is doing at that point. Don't take him away to a different location. Second thing is, try to involve all senses. I think the more a person has various sensory organs, right? Right from skin, eyes, ears, etc. And the more of these you involve in your experience, the more that person is going to maintain focus. I think yesterday there was a talk where you could program with a guitar. That's an example. It is involving your visual sense because it is something unique. So you're interested. It is a input which is again auditory. So irrespective of whether you can see it or not, you can hear it. That's a far out way of doing things, but that is the right way of thinking about how to build experiences. So involve as many senses as you can. For web applications, of course, what is possible is only certain senses can be involved in today's world. Things like visual, which is the most obvious and old. Touch and haptic. This is the new thing on the block. So most of these smartphones at least give you a vibration response when you try and touch it. But there has been research on trying to push that bar much further. There are patents filed on a flat surface. If you have a button, which like the call button or the disconnect button, it actually raises the screen a little bit. And that gives you that feedback that, yeah, even if you're not really looking, you know where to press. So that is the kind of, in a way, high fidelity haptics that we are moving to. And devices are moving in that direction. So we have to start thinking in those lines. And sound is actually the least used in most cases because you don't want to disturb people around you. But there are many apps which require you to use sound, and people normally never pay attention to sound until it becomes a problem, until you have that echo and until things are breaking up. You're like, okay, who cares about sound? So sound is something which can be used again as a direct sense. Smell and taste are two senses which cannot today at least, or at least I haven't seen any research where that can be literally used in an application sense. But again, smart people in the psychoanalysis world have figured out that if you have the right imagery and context, people tend to feel that. So for example, looking at me, I think it's obvious that I like eating, and I'm not really a very controlled person at that. And when I see images like this, it immediately talks to me. I know that, okay, when I have the mental strength to actually ignore all that is healthy and go and eat that, I will do it, and it may be pretty often. But that's an image which is visual, telling me about taste and sometimes even smell. So it is eminently possible to use proxies for certain senses and go ahead with your experience. And this is something which gets my goat, because we talk about experience and I mean, I come from the flash world, right? So many times when we go and talk to customers, people say, yeah, that's used for making something jazzy. Like, what does jazzy mean? Jazzy is not meant to create bells and whistles. It's not to create things which are trinkets, not shiny objects. An experience has to be thought about. It may only involve even black and white. So, for example, if you go to a Harisha's session today, he's my colleague, Harish Ramakrishnan. You'll see that he has a very unique deck he's created. It's simplistic, but it's going to hold your rapt attention. And that is what experience is all about. It's not about creating 50 colors, 40 shiny objects, and 17 monkeys running around. That is not what is going to get people's attention going. And this is the final piece of the recipe. Once you have completed something and you're done, acknowledge it and say that, yes, this is done. Next, you can explore XYZ thing. Or if that person has failed, say that you have not accomplished what you are set to. Please go back to this place or start again at this point and try again, because XYZ was the problem. This may seem obvious, but the thing is, many times when you're registering for something, you'll see that, like, yeah, fine, I've done this. Now, what next? Do I get an email? Do I get a notification? It's confusing. It's a problem that still exists, and as the more clear it is, the better it is for the experience, because that person knows exactly what he's achieved. So, very quickly, the directions of experience. If you are thinking about the ingredients for your app, what are some of the things which you can look at? First thing is 3D. 3D not only in terms of objects, which has been there for some time, 3D objects in your app which can rotate and those kind of things, but also displays. You would see a lot of ads trying to talk about 3D displays, and there's a lot of research going on. Today, we are in a world where very soon most of the displays that we are working on at work or seeing stuff at home is going to support 3D video, which provides a sense of depth. So we have to think about that. Next is sound. Think of a video conferencing kind of a solution where today you get sound mostly from one single place. But in if I may use that, the world is flat and you may be talking to some 5 offices. What if you could actually get sound from different meeting rooms coming from different directions and get a sense that you are in the same room? That is what companies like Cisco are trying to achieve. And that is the right expectation, because the more realistic it feels, the more involved you will be with all the people around you. There was an old project in HP Labs called By Reality, where they literally had a robot rolling around an office in another location with a person's image on a television. You can actually see it on hplabs.com. These are all attempts at making people involved, and sound is a very important part of it. I already talked about high definition haptics. The touch, your fingers are very sensitive. You can provide very good feedback. There was a simple example you can find on the web where customer support solution has on the screen, they see a reverse of the computer, the user screen, and they've just created a ridge for certain areas. That's not high tech, but it is high fidelity haptics, because the moment you're dragging something, the moment you cross that ridge, you know that you've reached someplace important to you. So it gives you that additional input to get your, to perform your task right and to get that right experience for that user. And this is like the nirvana. It doesn't exist. It's there on all sci-fi movies you've seen, but there is actually research going on this. There are different kinds, invasive, non-invasive, using magnetic resonance, all of this. But I think where people are trying to get is, once you can interface with the brain, which is you pretty much solve the problem of all the sensory organs and all of that. So you can do pretty much what you want. But this is like the furthest away, and this is very good to imagine. I'm going to leave you with a few examples, not of websites, because you'll see a lot of that all over today. But these are a few examples of how mundane things have been made different. This is a sink. It has an aquarium built in. It's water, an aquarium. Many people like going to the beach. It's a way of making you feel good about what you're doing. My colleague yesterday was saying, wow, this is going to make me wash my hands more. It just creates that experience. It fires your imagination and gets you engaged. This was Bubble Cosmos, which is essentially a combination of projectors, and they create bubbles with smoke inside on which you can project onto. And if you burst a bubble at a certain point, the detectors can actually understand that now that bubble is burst and project something else. So if you see the first two are green, but when that lady has burst it, you have a whole plethora of colors. So this is again involves touch, it involves visuals which are not what you expect out of the ball. It's not the most mundane visuals, and it captures attention. This is much more visible nowadays, but what is interesting about this particular instrument is it's a string instrument which you can blow onto that surface and create new sounds from string instruments. So, I mean, it is possible with a lot of work in the physical world, but here there are people who can just create like a virtual instrument with certain properties and create like a flute-like sound which sounds a little bit like a guitar. I don't know, I'm not a musician, but it is again breaking the barriers of what is mundane. That's pretty much what I had to talk about in terms of experience, but in reality, where we are today, we are actually taking great strides in experience even today. And to see some of that, I urge you to come to the Adobe stall, because we have displays of devices with new experiences built on experience for the developers, people like you. It's not just about consuming the app, it is about the experience of building apps for multiple devices. So please come to the Adobe stall and we can show you some of that. Thank you.